Hey guys, got another episode of Letters from Players here. So these were letters I got probably 10 years or so or more from these guys. So I got five more letters here. First, we'll start with baseball. One baseball. So this is Buddy Lewis, and he played in the 30s. He signed a 1939 play ball card for me, and he wrote a little note there uh, saying, "You have a prize card. 1916, really, on card 1917. I think that was when he was born. So an error card there. And what I did on these letters, I don't know if I pointed this out before, but is I find a picture on Google of them, and then I get this information from Baseball Reference, and I just copy and paste. So I copy and paste a photo and then their like bio information. And so what I like also to do was, especially these older guys, I liked one of the questions I like to ask them is who was the greatest player you played with and against. So Buddy Lewis, he would have played in the 30s, so he would have played with against Babe Ruth, and so he said Lou Gehrig for against, greatest player he played against. So his debut was 1935, and he played for the Senators. So he would have had to have played with against Babe Ruth too. And with was his teammate Buddy Meyer. So he played with the Senators with him. And another, so some of these questions, they might seem kind of generic, but what I asked him as well was the greatest moment he ever had in his baseball career. And although that might sound kind of like a generic question, I feel like all these guys are going to have different answers, and I'm genuinely interested in what what their greatest moment was and who they played with. Like to get a response like he played against Lou Gehrig, I mean that's pretty cool. One of the greatest players ever. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. That when I sent these was those kind of responses. You know, I mean, Buddy Lewis probably died 10 years ago, and he was probably close to 100 years old when he died. And the fact that he was still alive and he was still able to remember that he played with Lou Gehrig first, and then the fact that he played with Lou or against Lou Gehrig, pretty incredible, I think. So those are the kind of responses I'm specifically looking for. And so I asked him his greatest moment of his career, and seeing President Roosevelt throw out the first pitch in baseball in 1937. That's a pretty historic moment. I've seen a lot of photos of Roosevelt throwing out the first pitch in that game. So it would have been with the Washington against at the Washington Senators at their home stadium. So the next one I have is Bill Sharman. So Bill Sharman was one of the greatest basketball players ever. You don't hear a lot about him, but he was a great player, and he also was a coach. And he played for the Celtics and coached for the Celtics. So one of the other questions I ask is who had the greatest influence on your career? And a lot of these guys, so like, he played in the 50s and 60s. There wasn't a lot of basketball around in those days. So it's interesting to hear who influenced these guys. And so he responded with Bob Cousy, obviously one of the greats as well. He played with Bob Cousy for 10 years. And another question here from him was some of the players and teams he looked up to. Bill Russell and the Boston Celtics. Well, he ended up playing with Bill Russell and winning championships, and he played for the Celtics, obviously. So pretty good response there. And again, I have his bio information here, and then a photo there, and he signed the letter as well, which is kind of nice. And I did write to him with his 1957 Topps rookie, so I have that. A few more basketball here. So we'll start with So Sleepy Floyd played in the 80s and 90s. He played for Georgetown, and I asked him who the greatest player he played with and against. So I find this really interesting because he would have played against, so the greatest player he played with, Patrick Ewing. Makes sense. He played at Georgetown, would have played with Ewing, played in the NBA. So that makes sense. But he said against would have been Hakeem and Larry Bird, which obviously great players, but he would have played against Michael Jordan. He would have played against Michael Jordan at UNC. They were, in the ACC, so he would have played against him in college and as well as the NBA. So he didn't mention Michael Jordan, which how could you not mention Michael Jordan if you played in the NBA at the same time and played against him? I just found that kind of interesting. So the next one, Sam Perkins. So there I have a photo of Perkins with Jordan, James Worthy, Dean Smith. I'm not sure who that is. But anyways, so again, I asked the same question, greatest player you played with and against. Well, Larry Bird and Hakeem. So I don't think he would have played with either of those guys. But as you can see, he left out Michael Jordan. So Jordan played on the same team at North Carolina. They played on the Olympics, the 84 Olympics together. And, they would have played against each other several times in the NBA. So he played with him at UNC on the Olympic team. Jordan's first cover of Sports Illustrated was with Sam Perkins. It's just kind of odd that he would have left out Jordan. And I don't know, like both of these guys left out Jordan. Clearly, Jordan was the greatest player that either one of them would have played with or against. And it just makes you kind of wonder if they didn't have a good relationship, if they didn't like Jordan, if Jordan was too competitive, or, maybe they got into it in the past. You could see that happening with, a teammate of Jordan, that could have happened. Maybe they felt like he was too arrogant. Who knows? But they just left him off, and it just I just find that kind of odd. And the last letter I have here is from Walter Davis. So greatest player played with and against, well, Phil Ford and Michael Jordan. So Walter Davis is in the Hall of Fame. He played at North Carolina, but he wouldn't have played with Jordan. Would have just missed him by a couple years. And one of the greats. But, he did say Jordan. So that, in asking that question of the guys that would have played with and against Jordan, that's the response I wanted to know, is if they felt like Jordan was. Obviously, he had to have been, but for some reason they left him off. So when asking that kind of a question, that's what I'm basically looking for, is him to put down Michael Jordan. Or like as an old player, like Buddy Lewis, he would have said either someone like Lou Gehrig or Babe Ruth. And I have a few responses that talk about Babe Ruth in the letter. So I'll try to dig those out and find some of those. That's it for this episode. Please stay tuned for more. I'm going to have more of these and then more of a lot of other things. So keep watching and please subscribe. Thanks.